Upon a cold and moonless eve, when the fields lay bare and the road was as a strip of iron beneath the stars, there came a man so pinched with hunger that his very shadow seemed to totter with him, and he placed one hand upon his hollow belly and sighed like a bellows spent of breath, saying, "I am so hungry I could eat a—" And there, before his sentence might find its finish, there stood a horse of great dark stature, with eyes keen as polished jet and ears upright as two attentive sentinels, who bent his noble head and said, "A what?" At this the man, already half a ghost by reason of want, did stare as though heaven itself had answered him in the tongue of beasts, and he swallowed his next words as though they were a dry crust. "Good beast," quoth he, "thy interruption is as sudden as a thunderclap in a chapel, yet I confess thy question hath split my thought in twain." The horse stamped once upon the earth, and the sound rang out with all the dignity of a judge's gavel. "Then mend thy thought," he replied, "and tell me what famine hath driven thee to say, for no man speaks thus unless his stomach be waging war against his spirit." The man lifted both hands in helpless appeal, for his ribs seemed near enough to count by moonlight, and he cried, "I meant to say I could eat a loaf, a pie, a roast bird, a bowl of stew, a great slab of cheese, a round of buttered rolls, and perhaps the moon itself if it were dipped in honey." The horse regarded him long and silently, as though weighing whether such appetite were folly or prophecy, and at last he said, "Thou speak'st like one who hath not seen supper in a fortnight, and yet thou dost aim to consume the heavens. By my troth, men are wondrous creatures, for they name but a single hunger and then would banquet upon the world." "Mock me not," said the man, though there was more despair than offense in his tone, "for I have walked till my boots have grown weary, and I have begged of the wind, and the wind hath given me nothing but its own empty song." "That," said the horse, "is because the wind is a poor steward and a worse host. But thou art fortunate to meet me upon this road, for I know where food may be had, and I know also that hunger turns even the meek into philosophers." The man blinked. "Thou knowst of food." "Aye," said the horse with a toss of his mane, "for I am not merely a bearer of hooves and harness, but a creature acquainted with taverns, barns, orchards, and the habits of men. I know where bread is baked, where broth is born, and where pies go to hide when they fear being eaten." The man laughed then, a weak and cracked laugh at first, but it warmed itself as it rose, until he looked less like a dying scarecrow and more like a living soul. "Then, most wise horse, lead on, for if thy counsel be true, I shall follow thee to the ends of the earth, or at least to the nearest kitchen." "Nay," answered the horse, "to the inn upon the hill, where a fire doth burn and a keeper doth pretend to grumble while he serves more supper than he admits. Yet mark me well, thou shalt not enter there like a wolf in a cloister, but with modesty, for even the hungry must wear civility like a cloak." "I can wear what cloak thou pleasest," said the man, "so long as it be lined with bread." "There speaks the very soul of need," quoth the horse, and so together they went, the horse stepping with grave and measured gait, the man stumbling after him as though his feet were made of regret and old dust. As they traveled, the night grew thicker and the stars hung above like silver nails in a dark throne room, and the man, having little strength, did lean on the rhythm of the horse's speech as one leans on a staff. "Tell me," said he, "dost thou always answer men so sharply when they begin a sentence?" The horse snorted, and from his nostrils came a puff like the breath of winter. "Only when the sentence is of great promise," he replied, "for a half-finished hunger is a tragic thing, and I could not in conscience let it pass unexamined." "Then thou art an examiner of speeches as well as of roads," said the man. "Aye," said the horse, "and I have found that many a man begins with grandeur and ends in nonsense. Some say, I am so weary I could sleep for, and then they sleep not at all. Some cry, I am so angry I could, and then discover they are only hungry, and some, like thee, begin with appetite and nearly declare a war against the pantry." "A war I should gladly lose," said the man, "if it were fought with scones." "Thou shalt have better than scones," said the horse. "There is pottage enough, and ale, and a heel of fresh bread if the innkeeper hath not hidden it from himself." At last the inn came into sight, a squat and cheerful house whose windows shone gold against the dark, and from its chimney rose a thread of smoke as delicate as a blessing. The man almost cried out at the sight, for his heart leapt before his feet could follow. "By heaven," he whispered, "it looketh like paradise." "Nay," said the horse, "paradise hath fewer lice and better curtains, yet for mortal men this shall do." They entered, and the keeper, a stout fellow with arms like barrel staves, looked up from his board and cried, "What company have I here? A beast of burden and a burdened beast." "The first part is true," said the horse, and the second thou shalt understand presently, for this man is so hungry he could eat a. What? Said the keeper, laughing, while the man groaned and covered his face. Oh, misery, said the man, must my shame be carried from hall to hall? Nay, said the horse, it shall be carried only so far as the table. The keeper, who had a kind heart under a bark of roughness, set down a bowl of steaming broth before the man, and no sooner had the scent of onions and herbs risen from it than the man's eyes filled with tears. Good sir, said he, thou hast laid before me a miracle. Eat first, said the keeper, and deliver thy sermon after. So the man took the spoon as if it were a royal scepter and began to eat, and with every swallow his face changed, as frost changes to dawn. Color returned to his cheeks, hope to his brow, and speech to his tongue. Why, he said between mouthfuls, this broth is a velvet river, and this bread is a soft white dawn, and this cheese, oh, this cheese is a small round kingdom unto itself. The horse, meanwhile, stood patiently by the hearth and accepted his hay with stoic grace, though he glanced once or twice at the table as if wondering whether manners had ever compelled a horse to envy a man. Art thou content? Asked the horse. I begin to be, said the man, though my stomach still yawns like an empty theater. Then let it yawn no more, said the keeper, bringing forth a platter of meat and a pie whose crust shone as if the gods had glazed it. The man rose half from his seat in reverence. If I die this night, quoth he, let it be upon this pie, for such a death were sweet indeed. Speak not of dying whilst thou art being fed, said the horse. It is discourteous to the kitchen. I take thy meaning, said the man, and he fell to with a zeal so earnest that the keeper laughed, the horse nodded, and even the fire seemed pleased. When at last the man had eaten till his hunger was no longer a wolf but a kitten, he leaned back and sighed, not with despair this time, but with peace. Now, said he, I shall finish my sentence more wisely than before. Do so, said the horse. The man lifted his mug, wiped a crumb from his beard, and declared with all the solemn joy of one who hath passed through famine into feast, I am so hungry that I could have eaten a mountain, but now I am so grateful that I could embrace a horse. That, said the horse, lowering his head with mock solemnity, is a sentiment I shall remember, though I trust thou meanest not literally. And so they sat in the warm light, one a man restored by supper and the other a horse enriched by the comedy of human want, while the night pressed softly against the panes and the innkeeper stacked the plates with a grin, and the world, which had begun in an unfinished sentence, ended in a feast.